Her small frame convulsed violently against silk sheets imported from Milan, her back arching at angles that made grown men look away. Foam gathered at the corners of her mouth, tinged pink with blood from where she'd bitten her tongue. Monitors beeped in discordant panic, their sounds mixing with urgent voices speaking 6 different languages. Doctors who'd been flown in from Geneva, Tokyo, Munich, and the Mayo Clinic. 10-year-old Francesca Andrea was dying, and 500 doctors had already failed to save her. Welcome, my beautiful family and friends. If you're ready to dive into this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow, I've got another story coming your way. Just as thrilling, just as unforgettable, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. The crystal chandelier above the master suite swayed slightly, disturbed by the frantic movements of 17 people crowding around a hospital bed that didn't belong in a bedroom. But this wasn't a hospital. This was the Andrea estate. 22,000 square feet of hand-carved marble, Renaissance paintings worth more than small countries, and enough buried secrets to fill the East River twice over. None of that wealth, none of that power mattered now, because Francesca was slipping away. "Increase the dosage, now," Dr. Vescovi barked, his hands trembling as he prepared another injection. He'd performed surgery on 3 European royals. He'd saved a Saudi prince. But this girl, this one fragile child, was slipping through his fingers like smoke. Lorenzo Andrea stood at the foot of the bed, a force of nature in a custom Brioni suit that cost more than most people earned in a year. His knuckles were bone white around the bedpost, the ancient wood groaning under pressure it was never meant to bear. At 43, Lorenzo had built an empire. He controlled the ports from Newark to Providence. Judges whispered his name in chambers. Senators returned his calls within minutes. Rival families crossed the street when his cars passed. But right now, watching his only daughter suffer, Lorenzo Andrea, Il Leone, the man who'd made governors weep, was just a father, drowning in helplessness and rage. "What's happening?" His voice was cemetery quiet, the kind of quiet that came before executions. "You said the treatment would work." Dr. Vescovi didn't look up, too focused on Francesca's failing vitals. "The seizures aren't responding to any medication. Her body is rejecting everything we—" "Then try something else." "Mr. Andrea, we've exhausted. Then find something that isn't exhausted." Lorenzo's roar rattled the medical equipment. A nurse dropped a tray. 2 specialists from Johns Hopkins exchanged glances that said everything about their chances of leaving this room alive. They'd lost count of the treatments over the past 4 weeks. Experimental protocols from clinical trials, cutting-edge procedures, even a shaman from Peru, for God's sake. Nothing worked. In fact, Francesca only got worse. "Mr. Andrea," Dr. Vescovi finally met his eyes, and Lorenzo saw something there that made his blood freeze in his veins. Surrender. "We've tried every possible intervention. Her organs are beginning to shut down. The doctor's voice cracked. "I don't think she'll survive the night." The words landed like bullets. Lorenzo's hand moved to his waistband where his beretta rested against his hip. His fingers found the grip, familiar and cold. "Let me make something crystal clear, doctor." Lorenzo's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow filled the massive room. "If my daughter dies, you die. Every single person in this room dies. Your families receive your bodies in pieces. Do we understand each other?" It wasn't a threat. It was mathematics. Dr. Vescovi's face drained of color, but before he could respond, Francesca's monitor began shrieking. The girl's eyes rolled back until only white showed, her body going rigid as a board. "She's crashing!" someone yelled. "Get the crash cart!" The room exploded into controlled chaos. Doctors shouted orders in 3 languages, nurses scrambled between equipment, metal instruments clattered against marble. And through it all, Lorenzo stood frozen, watching his daughter die in front of him. He'd killed 17 men with his own hands. He'd destroyed families that crossed him. He'd built his empire on blood, fear, and calculated violence. But he couldn't save his own child. A knock on the door went unnoticed at first. Then another, more insistent. "Not now," someone shouted from inside. The door cracked open anyway, and Maria, the head housekeeper, poked her head in nervously. She'd worked for the Andreas for 18 years. She knew the rules. "Mr. Andrea, I am so sorry to interrupt, but—" "Get out!" Lorenzo's voice was a thunderclap. Maria flinched but didn't retreat. 20 years of service had taught her when to push. "Sir, I apologize, but the cleaning service is here, the night shift. Mrs. Rodriguez said she needs to check the supply inventory, or—" "I don't give a damn about—" "The medical supplies, sir. The sanitizing protocols you ordered for Miss Francesca's room. She says there's something wrong with the shipment from last week. Something about contaminated?" Something in those words made Lorenzo pause. Contaminated. They'd been so careful with Francesca's environment. Everything sterilized, controlled, supervised. Before he could respond, a woman's voice drifted up from the hallway, speaking Spanish to Maria. "Is everything okay? I keep hearing shouting. Is someone hurt?" Then came the sound that shattered the world. Francesca screamed. Not a medical sound, not something that belonged in any hospital or textbook. This was raw, primal agony, the sound of a child being torn apart from the inside. And Ariana Johnson, standing in the service hallway with a mop bucket and supply cart, felt that scream pierce straight through her chest like a blade. She didn't think, didn't calculate the consequences. Ariana had spent 34 years learning to be invisible. As a single mother who'd worked her way up from sleeping in her car to almost affording night classes, she'd mastered the art of disappearing. Clean the floors, avoid eye contact, collect the paycheck, survive another week. But that scream, that dying, desperate sound, it shattered something fundamental inside her. Her grandmother's voice echoed across 20 years of memory. "When you hear someone suffering, baby girl, you help. That's what we do. That's who we are." Ariana abandoned her cart. She pushed past Maria, ignoring the shocked gasp. She burst through the bedroom door, and the scene before her stopped her heart. The enormous room, the desperate doctors, the machine screaming warnings, and in the center of it all, a small girl dying on blood-stained sheets. "Who the hell?" someone started. But Ariana was already moving, her worn sneakers squeaking on marble as she rushed to the bedside. A doctor tried to intercept her. She ducked under his arms with the reflexes of someone who'd spent years dodging bill collectors and aggressive men. "Get her out of here," Dr. Vescovi shouted. "Security!" Ariana didn't listen. She reached Francesca's side and placed her rough, calloused hands on the girl's chest, feeling the violent spasms that racked her tiny body. The child's skin was furnace hot. Her lips were blue-purple. Her eyes stared at nothing and everything. Ariana had seen this before. Not in any hospital, not in medical school, but 17 years ago in her grandmother's Kentucky kitchen, when Ariana's baby cousin had nearly died from— "Ma'am, you need to leave immediately." A guard in a suit grabbed her shoulder, fingers digging in. Ariana spun around with surprising force, and for the first time, she locked eyes with Lorenzo Andrea. The Mafia boss stared at this stranger, this nobody in a janitor's uniform and shoes held together with duct tape, who just charged into his daughter's deathbed like she had any right to be there. "Touch me again," Ariana said quietly, her voice steady despite her heart hammering. "That girl doesn't need another injection. She needs someone who actually listens." Lorenzo raised one hand, stopping the guard mid-grab. Something in this woman's eyes, a fierce, almost feral determination, made him hesitate. She wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid for his daughter. There was a difference. "You have 20 seconds, Lorenzo said, his voice barely above a whisper. Then I put a bullet between your eyes." Ariana turned back to Francesca. 20 seconds to save a dying child. 20 seconds to change everything. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work. Morning light filtered through silk curtains, painting the master suite in shades of gold that seemed obscene after the night's darkness. Francesca Andrea slept peacefully, her chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. The monitors hummed, softly now, no longer shrieking warnings. Her small hand clutched a stuffed rabbit, and if you didn't look at the ivy lines still trailing from her arm, you might think she'd never been sick at all. Ariana sat slumped in the corner chair, her janitor's uniform wrinkled and stained with sweat. She hadn't slept, couldn't. Every time she'd closed her eyes, she'd seen those 20 seconds replaying, her grandmother's voice guiding her hands, the pressure points along Francesca's spine, the crushed peppermint leaves from her pocket mixed with warm water to open the child's airways. "Explain it again." Dr. Vescovi stood over her, notepad in hand, his professional mask cracked by exhaustion and humiliation. Behind him, 3 other specialists waited, their expensive suits rumpled from an all-night vigil. "There's nothing to explain," Ariana said quietly. "My grandmother used to treat seizures in our holler. Pressure points here and here," she gestured to her own neck and spine, "to reset the nervous system. Peppermint to open blocked airways. Heat compress on the chest. It's not science, it's just old knowledge." "That's impossible," one of the Tokyo specialists muttered. "Medically impossible." "And yet," Ariana gestured to the sleeping girl. Dr. Vescovi's jaw tightened. Then, surprisingly, he sat down across from her. "I'm sorry," he said, and the words seemed to cost him. "We failed her. You saved her. I don't understand it, but I'm grateful." Before Ariana could respond, the door opened. Lorenzo Andrea filled the frame, freshly showered and dressed, though his eyes were still bloodshot. "Out," he said simply. The doctors fled like smoke. Lorenzo studied Ariana for a long moment. Then he turned and walked down the hallway. "Follow me." His office was all dark wood and leather, the kind of room where empires were built and lives were ended. Lorenzo poured himself whiskey at 7 a.m. and didn't offer her any. "How much?" he asked. "Excuse me? How much money do you want? Name your price. 100,000? 500,000? He pulled out a checkbook. "I can have it wired before lunch." Ariana shook her head. "I don't want your money, Mr. Andrea. I just want to go home. I have a shift at the grocery store at noon, and—" "You're not leaving." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. "I'm sorry?" Lorenzo set down his glass with deliberate care. "You saved my daughter's life, which means you're valuable, which means you stay here until I'm certain she's fully recovered. You'll have a room on the 3rd floor, access to the kitchen and Francesca's wing. Consider yourself, promoted." "I don't want to be promoted. I want to—" "What you want," Lorenzo interrupted, his voice soft and deadly, "stopped mattering the moment you walked into that room. You're not a janitor anymore, Ms. Johnson. You're insurance." The kitchen was stainless steel and controlled chaos. Chef Marco, a stoddy man with nervous hands, barely looked at her as Maria showed her the staff meal prep area. "You'll take your meals here," Maria explained. "Don't touch the family ingredients, don't speak unless spoken to, and if Mr. Andrea's fiancé asks you anything, you answer politely and briefly." "Fiancé?" As if summoned, Elena Moretti glided into the kitchen wearing Chanel and confidence. She was stunning, dark hair swept into a perfect chignon, diamond earrings catching the light. Her smile was warm, but something about her eyes reminded Ariana of a cat watching a mouse hole. "So you're the miracle worker," Elena said. extending a perfectly manicured hand. "Lorenzo's told me all about you. How remarkable." Ariana shook her hand. The woman's grip was cold. "Just doing what anyone would do, ma'am." "Anyone?" Elena's laugh was crystalline. "Darling, 500 doctors couldn't do what you did. That makes you very special." Her gaze lingered a beat too long. Or very lucky. She left trailing expensive perfume. "She seems nice," Ariana said carefully. Maria said nothing, but her jaw tightened. Later that afternoon, Dr. Vescovi returned to examine Francesca. Ariana watched from the doorway as he checked vitals, his movements more careful now, more humble. "Her recovery is remarkable," he admitted. "But there's something—" "What?" Lorenzo demanded. "Her tongue. There's discoloration along the edges, and she mentioned certain foods making her nauseous, even before the seizures started. Foods she used to love." Ariana stepped forward. "What kind of foods?" "Chocolate. Anything with cocoa, actually. She said it tastes wrong now." Something cold slithered down Ariana's spine. She'd seen that before. Not a disease, not genetics. Something introduced. "Mr. Andrea, I'd like to review what Francesca's been eating. Everything for the past month." Lorenzo's eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because I don't think your daughter was sick. I think someone made her sick." The silence that followed was deafening. Before anyone could respond, the door burst open and Francesca ran in, wobbly but determined, throwing her arms around Ariana's waist. "Aunt Ariana, they said you're staying. You're really staying." Ariana's heart clenched as she stroked the girl's hair. Over Francesca's head, she met Lorenzo's dark gaze. She was trapped in a gilded cage with a child who needed her and a monster who owned her. And somewhere in this mansion, someone was trying to kill them both. Ariana learned the kitchen's rhythm over the next 3 days. She started small, peeling potatoes, washing herbs, scrubbing pans until her hands cracked. Chef Marco watched her with suspicion at first, but when she didn't gossip or get in the way, he began to soften. "You know your way around a kitchen," he admitted on the second morning, watching her properly julienne vegetables. "My grandmother ran a diner. You learn or you starve." Maria, the housekeeper, was harder to crack. But when Ariana stayed late to help inventory the dry goods, a task no one else wanted, the older woman finally spoke. "You really think someone poisoned Miss Francesca?" Ariana glanced around. They were alone in the pantry, surrounded by industrial shelves stocked with enough food to feed an army. "I think her symptoms don't match any disease I've ever seen," Ariana said carefully. "And I think it's convenient that she got sick right after Mr. Andrea announced the trust fund, $500 million, all to Francesca when she turns 18. Their eyes met. Maria knew something. "Who handles her meals?" Ariana asked. "Different people, but the supplements—" Maria hesitated. "There's a locked cabinet in the prep kitchen. Only 2 people have keys. Mr. Andrea and Miss Moretti?" Ariana finished. Maria said nothing, but her silence was answer enough. The locked cabinet haunted Ariana's thoughts. She began watching the prep kitchen during Francesca's mealtimes. Always the same routine. A sous chef named Victor would unlock the cabinet, remove a small glass jar of chocolate powder, mix it into Francesca's milk or dessert, then lock it away again. But twice, Ariana saw something else. Late at night, well past midnight, a courier would arrive at the service entrance, not the usual food suppliers. This man wore expensive shoes and carried a small refrigerated case. He'd hand it to Victor, who'd slip it into the locked cabinet when he thought no one was watching. Ariana started keeping a notebook hidden in her uniform pocket. Dates, times, names. "And Ariana?" She looked up from scrubbing the industrial sink. Francesca stood in the doorway, still pale but smiling, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Hey, sweetheart, you're supposed to be resting." "I got bored." Francesca climbed onto a stool, swinging her legs. "Can you make me hot chocolate? Not the kind Victor makes. It tastes funny." Ariana's hands stilled in the soapy water. "Funny how? Like, bitter?" "Alana says it's special European cocoa, that I need to drink it for my vitamins, but it makes my tummy hurt. And the squares Uncle Paolo brings taste the same, the chocolate ones." "Uncle Paolo?" "Elena's friend. He visits sometimes, always brings me treats, but they make me feel sleepy and weird." Ariana dried her hands slowly, her heart hammering. "Francesca, honey, I need you to do me a favor. Don't eat anything Uncle Paolo brings you anymore, okay? Just tell him you're full. Can you do that for me?" The girl nodded seriously. "Because it's medicine and I shouldn't share?" Exactly like that. After Francesca left, Ariana stood trembling by the sink. The chocolate. It's always the chocolate. That night, Ariana waited until the kitchen emptied. Maria had given her a master key for cleaning access, an unspoken alliance. The locked cabinet opened with a soft click. Inside, the glass jar of chocolate powder, several supplement bottles with medical labels, and in the back, wrapped in a black cloth, a small glass vial with no label at all. Ariana's grandmother had taught her to test suspicious substances with a simple method: a tiny amount on the tongue, then spit immediately. Poisons often had a specific metallic or chemical taste. She dabbed her pinky finger into the chocolate powder. The bitterness hit instantly. Wrong. Chemical. Nothing like cocoa. She spat into the sink, rinsing her mouth frantically. "Toxic resin," her grandmother's voice whispered in her memory. "Foxtruggle derivative. Causes seizures, organ failure, builds up slow in children." Ariana pulled out her phone with shaking hands. She photographed the jar, the vial, the labels. She was backing away when she heard footsteps in the corridor. She shoved her phone into her pocket, closed the cabinet, locked it. Victor walked in, followed by Elena Moretti. "Oh," Elena said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Ariana, what are you doing in the prep kitchen this late?" "Cleaning," Ariana said, gesturing to her cart. "Maria asked me to sanitize the counters." "At midnight?" "I work when I'm told to work, ma'am." Elena's gaze drifted to the locked cabinet, then back to Ariana. For one terrible moment, their eyes held. Elena knew, or suspected.
"How thorough of you," Elena said softly. "Victor, make sure all the cabinets are secured before you leave. We can't be too careful with cleanliness." It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. After they left, Ariana slipped out the service entrance, her hands still trembling. In her pocket, her phone held the evidence that could save Francesca, or get them both killed. She just had to figure out who to trust in a house full of murderers. 3 weeks earlier, Upper East Side, Manhattan. Elena Moretti sat in the private booth of Le Bernardin, her Hermès bag resting on cream leather beside her. Across the table, Dr. Adrian Serrano swirled his wine, looking uncomfortable in his bespoke suit. "You're asking me to poison a child," he said quietly. "I'm asking you to facilitate a gradual decline. Nothing traceable, nothing sudden, just unfortunate complications from an undiagnosed condition. You said yourself the compound is nearly impossible to detect. Nearly impossible isn't the same as $5 million, Adrian, Elena leaned forward, wired to your Cayman account within 24 hours of the marriage. That's enough to clear your gambling debts and retire to anywhere you want. Dr. Serrano's jaw tightened. He'd been Lorenzo's personal physician for 3 years. He knew too much about the family to walk away clean. She's 10 years old. She's $500 million, Elena said flatly. The moment Lorenzo signs that trust fund, and he will next month, everything goes to her. Not his organization, not his investments. A child. Do you know what his rivals will do when they realize his empire has no real heir of age? They'll tear him apart. And you get to play grieving stepmother and inheritor. I get to stabilize his assets and maintain order, Elena corrected. Lorenzo built an empire, but he's going soft. All he talks about now is legacy, Francesca's future, going legitimate. He's becoming a liability. She sipped her wine. I'm being practical. Dr. Serrano stared at her for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket and slid a small vial across the table. Twice daily and anything chocolate-based. Symptoms will mimic neurological disease, progressive organ stress. By the time anyone thinks to test for toxins, he couldn't finish. Elena pocketed the vial and smiled. You're a good friend, Adrian. I'm a dead man walking, he muttered. Ariana watched Elena glide through the main parlor, diamonds glittering at her throat as she greeted guests for Francesca's recovery celebration. A small gathering, only 40 of New York's elite, politicians and business partners. Elena played her part perfectly. She bent down to kiss Francesca's forehead, adjusted the dress, whispered something that made her laugh. Every camera phone in the room captured the moment. Devoted stepmother-to-be, philanthropist, savior. But Ariana had seen Elena's face in the kitchen an hour earlier, when she thought no one was watching. The way she'd gripped the counter, jaw clenched, as Victor whispered, "The girl's getting stronger, the janitor's interference." Then adjust the dosage, Elena hissed. I don't care how, I need results before the lawyers finalize the trust fund. Ariana ducked behind the industrial freezer, heart hammering. Now, watching Elena work the crowd with practiced grace, Ariana felt sick. You're asking a lot of questions. Chef Marco cornered her in the wine cellar later that evening, his normally kind face hard with worry. I'm trying to keep Francesca alive, I said bluntly. By getting yourself killed? Marco glanced at the stairs. You need to understand how this house works. There's Lorenzo's world, the business, the empire, the violence. And then there's the house staff. We see everything, we say nothing. Who's Dr. Serrano? Marco's face went pale. How do you... I heard Victor mention him. Who is he?
Lorenzo's personal physician, comes twice a month for wellness checks. But he's also Elena's doctor, has been for years, since before she even met Lorenzo. Marco hesitated. Word is Serrano's into the casinos for serious money, Brooklyn operations, the kind of debt that gets people disappeared. And Elena pays his bills? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Footsteps on the stairs. Marco grabbed a wine bottle at random. We're having this conversation because you saved that little girl's life, he whispered urgently. But if you push this, there's someone else you need to know about. Rocco DeSanto, head of household security, handles problems. He's loyal to money, not people. And lately, he's been spending a lot of time with Miss Moretti. Ariana saw it happen that night. She was returning to her room, the small guest suite on the 3rd floor, when she heard voices in the gallery.
She pressed herself into an alcove as Elena emerged from the shadows, pressing an envelope into the hands of a massive man in a black suit. Rocco DeSanto. Had to be. Shoulders like a linebacker, scar running through his left eyebrow. "The new dosage," Elena murmured. "And Rocco, the janitor. She's becoming a problem. Want me to handle it?" "Not yet. Lorenzo's attached to her. For now, just make sure she understands her place. A warning. Nothing that leaves marks." Money exchanged hands. Then something else. A small vial that caught the light. Ariana's breath caught. Too loud. Rocco's head snapped toward her alcove. His eyes narrowed. Elena had already disappeared up the stairs. Rocco moved toward Ariana with the casual confidence of a predator. "You lost, cleaning lady?" "Just heading to my room. A long way from the 3rd floor." He stepped closer, backing her against the marble wall. He smelled like expensive cologne and violence. "Here's some free advice. Whatever you think you know about this family, you don't. Whatever you think you saw tonight, you didn't." His hand came up, not touching her, just resting on the wall beside her head, caging her in. "There's a girl in Brooklyn who asked too many questions last year. They found pieces of her in 3 different boroughs. You understand what I'm saying?" Ariana's voice came out steadier than she felt. "Perfectly. Good." He smiled, and it was worse than his threats. "Because Miss Moretti likes things clean and quiet, and I'm very good at making problems disappear." He walked away whistling. Ariana stood frozen in the alcove, her phone heavy in her pocket with its damning photos. She wasn't just investigating a poisoning anymore. She was on a kill list. 2:47 a.m. The Andrea estate settled into the kind of silence that only came when predators slept. Ariana moved through the kitchen like a ghost, her sneakers soundless on tile. She'd memorized the security camera blind spots over the past week. Maria had pointed them out with her, careful silence, never saying why. The locked cabinet waited in the prep kitchen. Her hand shook as she picked the lock with a bent paperclip and a tension wrench she'd fashioned from a wire coat hanger. Her grandmother had taught her this too, back when they'd been so poor that they had to break into their own storage unit when they couldn't afford the fee. Click. The cabinet opened. Ariana photographed everything. The chocolate powder jar from 6 angles, the supplement bottles with their falsified labels, the black-wrapped vial with its clear, viscous contents. She found a ledger tucked behind the bottles, handwritten delivery dates, initials EM, RD, AS, and amounts in milligrams. She photographed every page. Then she did the dangerous part. Using a sandwich bag from her pocket, she scooped a sample of the chocolate powder, sealed it, tucked it into her bra where no pat-down would find it easily. She was relocking the cabinet when she heard it, a footstep in the hallway. Ariana killed her phone's light and pressed herself behind the industrial refrigerator. Through the crack, she watched Victor shuffle past, half asleep, heading toward the bathroom. She waited 5 agonizing minutes, then slipped out the service door into the October cold. Brooklyn, next morning. The subway from Manhattan to Brooklyn took 40 minutes. Ariana had told Maria she needed to run personal errands, a flimsy excuse, but Maria had nodded and covered her absence. The diagnostic lab sat above a bodega on Flatbush Avenue, its windows plastered with peeling advertisements for STD testing and paternity results. Inside, Carmen Rodriguez looked up from her macroscope and broke into a grin. "Ariana Johnson! Jesus, it's been what, 5 years?" 6. Ariana hugged her old friend. They'd worked together at a Times Square diner back when Ariana had been sleeping in her car. "I need a favor. Off the books." Carmen's face faded. "How off the books?" "The kind where you don't ask questions and I pay cash." Ariana slid the sealed sample across the counter. "I need a full toxicology screen, specifically looking for heavy metals, plant-based alkaloids, anything that would cause neurological symptoms in a child." Carmen held the bag up to the light. "This is cocoa powder."
I know what it looks like. Just test it, please. This is gonna cost you 200. And Ariana, Carmen's voice dropped, if this is what I think it is, if someone's poisoning a kid, you need to go to the police. The police can't help where I am. Carmen steadied her friend's face, the exhaustion, the fear, the desperate determination. How soon do you need results? Yesterday. Give me 48 hours. That night, Ariana couldn't sleep. She stood on the small balcony outside her third-floor room, overlooking the east wing where Francesca's bedroom glowed with nightlights. The October wind cut through her thin sweater, but she stayed, watching. At 11:37 p.m., Elena's silhouette appeared in Francesca's doorway. Ariana's breath caught. She pressed herself against the stone wall, shrouded in shadows, but with a clear view through the sheer curtains. Elena sat on Francesca's bed, stroked her hair, pulled a small pill box from her robe pocket, pink and innocent-looking, the kind that held vitamins. Open up, sweetheart. Your special medicine. It'll help you sleep. It makes me feel funny, Francesca mumbled, half asleep. I know, darling, but the doctors say you need it. Just a little longer. Ariana watched Elena tip 2 pills into Francesca's mouth, hand her water, and sure she swallowed. The woman who was slowly murdering a child sat there afterward, stroking her hair, humming a lullaby like a loving mother. Ariana gripped the balcony railing so hard her knuckles went white. Rage and nausea warred in her stomach. 2 more days, she thought. Then I'll have proof Lorenzo can't ignore. 48 hours later. The text came at 6:23 a.m. Results in. Call me. -C. Ariana's hands shook as she dialed from the service stairwell. It's positive, Carmen said without preamble. Low-level cardiac glycoside, digitalis derivative, probably from foxglove, mixed with trace amounts of aconite. Whoever made this knew exactly what they were doing. It's designed to build up slowly, cause progressive organ stress, mimic neurological disease. Enough to kill?
Over time, absolutely, especially in a child. Ariana, this is murder. Premeditated, calculated murder. Can you email me the results? Already sent, encrypted. And Ariana, be careful. Whoever did this is playing for keeps. Ariana ended the call and opened her email. There it was. Clinical, detailed, damning. She had everything. Photos, lab results, testimony from Maria and Marco, dates and delivery records. She just needed to get it to Lorenzo. Ariana headed toward his office, her phone clutched in her hand like a lifeline. The early morning light streamed through the estate's tall windows. In a few minutes, this nightmare would be over. Elena would be exposed. Francesca would be safe. She turned the corner toward Lorenzo's wing and froze. Elena stood outside Lorenzo's office, perfectly composed in a cream silk blouse. Beside her, Rocco and 2 other guards. And in Elena's manicured hand, she held Ariana's sandwich bag, the duplicate sample Ariana had hidden in her room. There she is, Elena said, her voice filled with manufactured concern. Lorenzo, I'm so sorry to disturb you this early, but we have a serious problem. Lorenzo emerged from his office, coffee in hand, his expression darkening when he saw Ariana. I found this in Ms. Johnson's quarters during a routine security check, Elena continued, holding up the bag. It appears to be cocaine, and there's more. She's been photographing our kitchen, our security protocols, our personal documents. Elena's eyes glistened with false tears. I think she's been planning to sell information to your rivals, or worse. That's a lie, Ariana's voice cracked. Lorenzo, she's the one. She's also been disappearing off the estate. Brooklyn, meeting with unknown contacts. We had the security logs. Lorenzo, please, just look at my phone. Ariana held it out. Rocco moved fast, snatching it from her hand. I'll secure this as evidence. No! Ariana lunged for it, but 2 guards grabbed her arms. Lorenzo stared at her, his expression unreadable.
Search her room, now." "Lorenzo, she's poisoning Francesca!" Ariana screamed as they dragged her backward. "The chocolate powder, it's foxglove. Check the lab results on my phone, please." But Lorenzo had already turned away, Elena's hand on his arm, her voice a soothing murmur in his ear. The guards hauled Ariana down the corridor, and her phone, with all its evidence, all its proof, disappeared into Rocco's pocket. They kept Ariana locked in her room for 2 days. Guards outside her door, meals delivered on trays, her phone gone, her evidence confiscated. Just 4 walls and the crushing certainty that Elena had won. On the second night, a piece of paper slid under her door. "Tomorrow, 7 p.m., banquet for Francesca's recovery. 30 guests. This is your only chance. M." Ariana's hands trembled as she read it. Maria, the housekeeper, was still on her side. An hour later, another note. "I copied everything before Rocco took your phone. USB drive hidden in flower bin, bottom shelf, prep kitchen. Be ready. M." Hope flickered back to life. At midnight, the door unlocked quietly. Maria slipped inside carrying Ariana's janitor uniform. 5 minutes, the older woman whispered. "The guard change happens at 12:15. Chef Marco is waiting in the kitchen." The prep kitchen was dark except for a single light over the metal workstation. Chef Marco looked like he'd aged a decade, his face drawn with fear and determination. "This is insane," he muttered, pulling the USB drive from the flower bin. "If this doesn't work, Elena will have us all killed. If we do nothing, Francesca dies slowly, and we live knowing we let it happen." Marco's jaw tightened. He nodded. "Tomorrow's banquet," Ariana said, thinking fast. "Lorenzo announcing it as a celebration of Francesca's recovery. Elena will be there, playing the devoted stepmother. We need to expose her in front of everyone, publicly, undeniably." How? Ariana's mind raced back to her grandmother's kitchen, to the old remedies that walk the line between healing and harm. We make Elena experience what she did to Francesca. Not the poison. We don't kill her, but the symptoms, the fear. She explained her plan. Marco's eyes widened. "That's actually brilliant," he said slowly. "Lobelia and activated charcoal. It'll mimic the seizure symptoms. Tongue discoloration, tremors, respiratory distress. Looks terrifying, but it's completely harmless. Wears off in 20 minutes. Can you make it?" "I can make it, but getting it into her glass without anyone noticing." "Leave that to me," Maria said from the doorway. Both of them jumped. "I've been serving this family for 18 years. No one watches the help." Ariana gripped the older woman's hand. "If this goes wrong, then we die knowing we tried." Maria's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. "That little girl deserves better than what Elena planned for her. Let's give her that chance." The next evening, the Andrea Estate's grand dining room had been transformed. Crystal chandeliers blazed with light. The long mahogany table was set for 30 guests, Lorenzo's inner circle, his legal team, business associates, and family from Chicago and Boston. White roses and candles created an atmosphere of celebration. Francesca sat at Lorenzo's right hand, wearing a pale blue dress that made her look like a little princess. She was healthier now, color in her cheeks, but still fragile, still recovering from months of slow poisoning. Elena held court at Lorenzo's left, radiant in an emerald Versace gown that probably cost more than Ariana earned in a year. She laughed at jokes, touched Lorenzo's arm with practiced affection, played her role flawlessly. Ariana stood near the kitchen doors, flanked by 2 guards. Lorenzo had insisted she attend, as a courtesy to my daughter, he'd said coldly, but she was clearly meant to observe her own disgrace before being permanently removed. Elena caught her eye across the room and smiled. A predator smile, victorious. Not yet, Ariana thought. Wait. Chef Marco emerged from the kitchen, followed by a team of waiters carrying trays of champagne flutes. The operative, a custom elderflower cocktail with lime and edible gold leaf. Elegant, beautiful, and 30 glasses, all identical except one. Maria, acting as head of service, directed the distribution with practiced efficiency. Ariana watched with held breath as Maria approached Elena's seat. The housekeeper set down the marked glass, a subtle chip on the base, invisible unless you knew to look for it, directly in front of Elena. "To my daughter," Lorenzo announced, rising with his glass, "who fought death itself and won. To Francesca, may you have a long, healthy, brilliant life." "To Francesca," the room echoed. Glasses rose and everyone drank. Elena sipped her cocktail, smiling warmly across the table at Francesca. "You look absolutely beautiful tonight, sweetheart, like a little angel." Ariana checked her watch. The tincture would take 7 to 9 minutes to activate. Marco had timed it perfectly. Enough time for the first course, for everyone to relax, for the room to feel celebratory and safe. Conversations flowed around the table. Laughter echoed off marble walls. Waiters delivered the first course, seared Hudson Valley foie gras with fig compote. Lorenzo's brother told a story about their childhood, making the table roar with laughter. Elena participated perfectly, complimenting the food, asking Francesca about school, touching Lorenzo's hand with casual intimacy. 6 minutes. "I must say," Elena announced to the table, her voice carrying, "it's remarkable how quickly Francesca recovered once we implemented proper medical protocols. Professional oversight makes all the difference." Her gaze flickered to Ariana for just a moment, twisting the knife. 7 minutes. "Elena has been instrumental," Lorenzo agreed. "I don't know what I would have—" Elena's fork clattered against her plate.
Elena? Lorenzo frowned. "You all right?" "I'm fine, I just—" Elena's hand went to her throat. Her breathing quickened, shallow and rapid. "I feel strange." Sweat beaded on her forehead, visible even in the candlelight. "Darling, what's wrong?" Lorenzo leaned closer. Elena tried to speak, but when her mouth opened, Ariana saw it, the telltale discoloration spreading across her tongue, blue-black creeping along the edges like ink in water. Gasps rippled around the table. "Oh my God," someone whispered. "Her tongue." Elena's whole body began to tremble, subtle at first, then more violently. The same tremors that had racked Francesca's small frame for weeks. Her champagne glass fell, shattering on the marble floor. "Get a doctor," someone shouted. Elena tried to stand, gripping the table, but her legs buckled. She collapsed back into her chair, convulsing, her emerald dress riding up as her body fought against itself. Panic erupted. Guests pushed back from the table, 2 men ran for help. Lorenzo knelt beside Elena, trying to hold her steady. And Ariana stepped forward, breaking free from her guard's grip. "Stop." Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Everyone stop." The room froze. Ariana walked slowly toward Elena's convulsing form, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. "Look at her tongue," Ariana said, her voice steady and cold. "The blue-black discoloration. Look at the tremors, the respiratory distress, the way her body is fighting against itself." She turned to face the room. "These are the exact symptoms Francesca Andrea suffered for 4 months. Symptoms that 500 doctors couldn't explain. Symptoms that nearly killed a 10-year-old girl." "What are you saying?" Lorenzo's voice was dangerous. "I'm saying it wasn't a disease." Ariana's eyes never left Elena. "It was poison." The room went deathly silent. "Marco, the evidence." Chef Marco stepped forward, hands shaking but determined, carrying a laptop. He set it on the table and opened files, photographs of the tainted chocolate powder, the vials, the ledger with Elena's initials. This was found in the locked cabinet that only Miss Moretti controlled. Delivery dates, dosage amounts, her signature on every entry.
She's lying, Alana gasped between tremors, her voice breaking. She's framing me. She planted... Maria. The housekeeper placed a sealed evidence bag on the table, the original chocolate powder sample. Independent toxicology from a lab in Brooklyn. Cardiac glycoside derived from foxglove, mixed with aconite, designed to build up slowly in a child's system, designed to mimic neurological disease, designed to kill. She turned to Lorenzo, whose face had gone ashen. Your fiancé has been poisoning your daughter for 4 months. Slowly, carefully, waiting for Francesca to die so she could inherit your empire. That's insane, Elena's voice cracked with desperation and rage. Lorenzo, please, she's the one. I would never... Then explain the ledger, Ariana said flatly. Explain why your initials appear beside every delivery. Explain why Dr. Serrano, your personal physician who owes you $5 million in gambling debts, was the one ordering these compounds? Papa? Francesca's small voice cut through everything. Miss Elena gave me special chocolate every day. She said it was vitamins, but it always made me feel sick and sleepy. The little girl's words landed like a bomb. Lorenzo stood slowly, his face transforming from shock to something ancient and terrible, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Lorenzo, Elena struggled to her feet, her tremors already beginning to subside as the harmless tincture wore off. I love you. I love Francesca. You loved my money, Lorenzo said, his voice barely a whisper. You stood in my home, slept in my bed, kissed my daughter goodnight while you murdered her. Elena's mask finally shattered. The performance ended, her face twisted with rage and desperation. You were going to leave everything to a child, she screamed. $500 million to a little girl while your empire crumbles. I was saving you from yourself. Her hand plunged into her evening bag. When it emerged, she was holding a small revolver. She aimed it directly at Ariana's chest. If I'm going down, Elena hissed, I'm taking you. The gunshot was deafening, but it didn't come from Elena's gun. Lorenzo's Beretta was already in his hand. The bullet hit Elena's shoulder, spinning her backward. Her gun clattered across the marble floor. She screamed, rage and pain and disbelief mixing into something inhuman. You shot me! Blood bloomed across the burgundy Valentino. After everything I've done for you, after I stood by you, you poisoned my daughter. Lorenzo's voice was arctic calm, but his hand trembled. You sat at my table, you slept in my bed, you kissed my child goodnight while murdering her. The room had frozen, 30 of New York's most dangerous men watching their boss unravel. Elena clutched her shoulder, backing toward the windows. She was a liability. Your empire was crumbling because you'd gone soft, planning to leave everything to a child. Francesca, Ariana's shout cut through everything. Dr. Serrano had emerged from the crowd, his face pale but determined, moving toward the girl with something gleaming in his hand. A syringe. Ariana didn't think. She threw herself across the table, scattering crystal and china, and grabbed Francesca. They tumbled together beneath the table as Serrano lunged. Get the girl, Elena shrieked. She's the loose end. Finish what I started. Serrano never reached them. Rocco DeSanto stepped into his path. For one frozen moment, the massive security chief and the corrupt doctor stared at each other. I'm done, Rocco said quietly. Then he broke Serrano's wrist with one brutal twist. The syringe fell. Serrano's scream echoed off marble. Rocco, you work for me, Elena's voice cracked with desperation. I paid you. You paid me to watch her. Rocco jerked his head toward Ariana. Not to murder kids. I got lines. Everything happened at once. Elena lunged for her fallen gun. Lorenzo fired again, this time center mass. Elena staggered, clutching her chest, burgundy fabric turning black with blood. Two of Elena's bought men, waiters who'd been on her payroll, drew weapons. Lorenzo's brother took one down with a wine bottle to the skull. One of the lawyers shot the other. Glass shattered. Someone overturned the table. Francesca screamed. Through it all, Ariana held the girl, shielding her body, whispering, Don't look, baby, don't look, I've got you. Elena fell to her knees, blood pooling beneath her. She looked up at Lorenzo with something like genuine confusion in her dying eyes. I loved you. This was for us. You loved my money. Lorenzo stood over her, his gun still raised, his face carved from stone. Elena tried to speak. Blood bubbled from her lips. Then she collapsed forward, her perfect hair spreading across marble like dark water. The gunshot's echo faded into terrible silence. Lorenzo stared at the woman he'd almost married, the woman who'd tried to murder his daughter. His gun hand dropped to his side. For just a moment, his carefully constructed empire of violence and control showed its cracks. He looked lost, hollowed out, a father who'd failed to protect his child from a monster sleeping in his own bed. Papa! Francesca's voice, small and terrified, from beneath the table.
Lorenzo's mask snapped back into place. He holstered his weapon and straightened his jacket with deliberate care. It's over, Principessa. You're safe now. Ariana crawled out, pulling Francesca with her. The girl's eyes were wide with shock, but mercifully, she'd kept her face buried in Ariana's shoulder through the worst of it. Lorenzo's inner circle, the men who'd witnessed everything, waited in tense silence. 30 witnesses to their boss's private nightmare. Dr. Serrano, Lorenzo said calmly, as if discussing the weather. You have 10 seconds to tell me every person who helped Miss Moretti, every name, every transaction. Rocco held the doctor's broken wrist at a brutal angle. Serrano sobbed out a confession. Names, dates, shell companies, offshore accounts. 2 more waiters. A lawyer. 3 suppliers. Lorenzo listened with terrifying patience. Remove Miss Moretti's body, he finally ordered. Vincenzo, call our cleaners. Marco, dispose of the tainted food products and have the entire kitchen sanitized. Documentation of everything goes to my attorney. This was self-defense. Everyone here is a witness. 30 heads nodded in unison. And Serrano? Lorenzo's voice dropped to a whisper. Make it hurt. 2 guards dragged the screaming doctor out through the service entrance. Lorenzo turned to his guests, blood-stained, shocked, but loyal. What you saw tonight was betrayal at its worst. A snake in our home, but it's been cut off. He gestured to Ariana, still holding Francesca. This woman risked everything to expose the truth. She saved my daughter twice. Anyone who doubts her loyalty answers to me personally. The room's tension shifted. Slowly, one by one, Lorenzo's men, made men, soldiers, capos, nodded their acknowledgement. Ariana had become untouchable. As the guards began their grim work, as the guests filed out in stunned silence, Lorenzo finally approached Ariana and Francesca. Her daughter looked at him with something new in her eyes, not hero worship, understanding. She'd seen her father kill someone. She'd seen the violence that built their gilded cage. Papa, she whispered, is Miss Elena really gone? Yes, baby. She can't hurt you anymore. Francesca buried her face in Ariana's shoulder. I want Aunt Ariana to stay. Forever. Lorenzo's eyes met Ariana's over her daughter's head. In them she saw exhaustion, shame, and something almost like gratitude. She stays, he said quietly, as long as she wants. Ariana looked around the blood-spattered dining room, at the shattered crystal, at the dark stains spreading across Italian marble where Elena Moretti had died. She'd survived. Francesca was safe, but the price of that safety was becoming part of a world she'd spent her whole life running from. I'll stay, Ariana said finally. For her. Lorenzo nodded once. Then he turned to address what remained of his empire, his voice steady despite the carnage. But his hands, Ariana noticed, still trembled slightly. Even monsters had limits. And her phone, with all its evidence, all its proof, disappeared into Rocco's pocket.
3 days later. The Andre estate felt different now, quieter, like the house itself was holding its breath. Ariana stood outside Lorenzo's study, summoned by Maria at dawn. Through the heavy oak door, she could hear voices. Lorenzo's brother from Chicago, his consigliere, his attorney. The inner circle, reshaping a world that Elena's betrayal had fractured. The Castellano family is asking questions. They heard about the incident. They're wondering if we're vulnerable. Let them wonder. Lorenzo's voice cold and certain. Anyone who tests us right now learns what happens to traitors. Spread the word. Elena Moretti was a snake. We cut off the head. The Andrea family is stronger than ever. And the woman? The janitor? A pause. Then, she's family now. Anyone touches her, they answer to me.
The door opened. Lorenzo's brother exited, nodding curtly at Ariana, then the attorney. Finally, Lorenzo emerged, looking older somehow, despite being freshly shaved and impeccably dressed. Come in. His study was all leather and mahogany, walls lined with books he probably never read. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey without asking if she wanted one. You saved my daughter's life, twice. Lorenzo slid a glass across the desk. That kind of debt doesn't get paid with money, but I'm going to try anyway. He opened a folder. Inside, a deed to a brownstone in Brooklyn Heights. Keys, bank statements showing an account with $500,000. The house is yours, paid in full. The money is yours, no strings. Lorenzo's voice was carefully neutral. You can walk out of here today and never look back. I'll make sure no one from my world ever touches you. Ariana stared at the papers. Freedom. Security. Everything she'd struggled for since she was 16 years old. Or, Lorenzo continued, you stay, as Francesca's guardian. Not a servant, not staff, family. You oversee her meals, her education, her security. You have full authority to veto anyone who comes near her. Salary of $200,000 annually. The brownstone is still yours, your space, your sanctuary. You come and go as you please. Why? Ariana's voice cracked. Why would you trust me with that kind of power? Lorenzo met her eyes. Because you're the only person in this house who gave a damn about my daughter without caring who I am or what I can do for you. That's rarer than you think. Ariana picked up the deed, turned it over in her hands. A brownstone in Brooklyn Heights. She could picture it. Sunlight through tall windows, a garden maybe, a life that was hers. I want the house, she said finally, and I want one more thing. Name it. My daughter, Emily. She's 14, living with my mother in Kentucky. I want her here, safe, with access to the best schools in New York. If I'm staying in your world, she needs to be protected from it. Lorenzo nodded slowly. Done. I'll have her and your mother relocated within the week. Penthouse in Tribeca, security, whatever you need. Just Emily. My mother, Ariana's jaw tightened. We don't have that kind of relationship. Understood. Lorenzo stood, extended his hand. Do we have a deal? Ariana looked at his outstretched hand, the hand that had killed Elena 3 days ago, that had built an empire on violence and fear, the hand that had cradled his dying daughter and begged God for mercy. She shook it. I stay until Francesca doesn't need me anymore, or until your world puts her in danger I can't protect her from. Then I walk, and you let me. Deal. That evening, Ariana found Francesca in the library, curled up in an oversized chair with a book she wasn't really reading. The girl looked up, and something in her eyes had changed. She'd aged a decade in the span of a dinner party. Hey, sweetheart. Ariana sat beside her. Your dad told me you've been asking for me. Francesca abandoned the book and climbed into Ariana's lap, something she hadn't done since that first night. Are you leaving? Everyone always leaves. I'm staying. Ariana stroked her hair. I'm not going anywhere. Promise? Promise. Francesca was quiet for a long moment. Then, Miss Elena tried to kill me. Papa shot her. I saw the blood. Ariana's heart clenched. I know, baby. I'm so sorry you had to see that. Is Papa a bad man? The question hung in the air like smoke. Ariana thought about lying, about telling her the comfortable story, but Francesca deserved more than fairy tales. Your papa has done bad things, Ariana said carefully. He lives in a world where bad things are sometimes necessary, but he loves you more than anything. And love is complicated. Do you think he's bad? I think he's your father, and I think he'd burn the world down to keep you safe. That's not good or bad. It just is.
Francesca considered this. Aunt Ariana? Yeah? I'm glad you're staying. You make things feel safe. Through the library's open door, Ariana caught Lorenzo watching them. He stood in the hallway, half hidden by shadow, and for just a moment, his carefully constructed armor fell away. She saw grief there, and guilt, and something that might have been hope, that maybe his daughter could still have one piece of normalcy in their twisted world. Their eyes met. Lorenzo nodded once, a gesture of acknowledgement and gratitude and something like respect. Then he turned and disappeared into the darkness of his own house. Come on, Ariana said, lifting Francesca. Let's get you to bed. Tomorrow we're going shopping for your new room. You get to pick everything. Everything? Everything. Pink walls, princess bed, the works. As they climbed the stairs together, Francesca's small hand in hers, Ariana felt the weight of her choice settling over her shoulders. She'd become part of Lorenzo Andrea's world, part of the violence, part of the secrets. But Francesca was alive and safe and smiling. For now, that was enough. Across town, Little Italy, in a dimly lit restaurant, 3 men sat around a corner booth, speaking in hushed Italian. Andrea's woman turned on him, tried to poison the kid. I heard he killed her himself, at a family dinner. Shows weakness. Man can't even control his own house. The eldest, Sal Castellano, capo of the Castellano family, swirled his wine thoughtfully. Or it shows he'll do anything to protect his heir. That's not weakness. That's dangerous. So we test him. Castellano smiled slowly. Not yet. Let him rebuild. Let him think he's safe. But keep watching. Everyone has a weakness. What's Andrea's? The old man's smile widened. That little girl. And the woman protecting her. He raised his glass. To patience. And to opportunity. The 3 men drank. And in the Andrea estate, Ariana tucked Francesca into bed, unaware that she'd just become a target herself. But it didn't come from Elena's gun. 6 months later, morning light poured through the kitchen windows, turning everything golden. Ariana stood at the industrial stove, not as a janitor now, but as something else entirely, guardian, protector, the woman who'd saved a Mafia princess and lived to tell about it. Aunt Ariana, can I have chocolate chip pancakes? Francesca bounced into the kitchen in her school uniform, backpack already on, her cheeks flushed with health and life. You had chocolate chip pancakes yesterday, sweetheart, but they're so good. Ariana laughed, flipping blueberry pancakes instead. Tell you what, you ace that math test today and we'll have chocolate chip tomorrow. Deal? Deal. Francesca climbed onto her usual stool, swinging her legs. On the refrigerator behind her, a dozen drawings were pinned with magnets. Crayon families, stick figures holding hands, a recurring image of a woman with dark hair labeled Aunt Ariana holding a smaller figure labeled Me. The kitchen had become their sanctuary. Chef Marco had retired, generously, with a pension that would keep 3 generations comfortable. Now Ariana oversaw all of Francesca's meals, testing every ingredient, trusting no one but Maria and herself. The service door opened, and Emily walked in, tall and gangly at 14, still adjusting to New York private school, but thriving in ways Ariana had never dared dream. Her daughter wore the uniform of St. Catherine's Academy, books tucked under her arm. Morning, Mom. Morning, Squirt. I'm not a squirt. I'm almost 11. Still a squirt.
Ariana watched them bicker with warmth spreading through her chest. This strange, cobbled-together family in a mansion built on blood and secrets, this was happiness. Complicated, dangerous, imperfect happiness. Girls, 5 minutes. The car's waiting. Both children groaned, but obeyed, gathering their things. Lorenzo's security would drive them to school. Bulletproof sedan, trained drivers, protocols Ariana had personally approved. The world outside was still dangerous, but inside this small circle, they were safe. After the girls left, the kitchen fell quiet. Ariana poured herself coffee and stood at the window overlooking the estate's gardens. Winter had stripped the trees bare, but spring was coming. You could feel it in the air. "You look content?" Lorenzo's voice didn't startle her anymore. She'd learned to sense his presence, the particular weight of his footsteps, the expensive leather and cedar scent of his cologne. "I'm alive," she said simply. "So is Francesca. That's more than I hoped for 6 months ago." Lorenzo joined her at the window, keeping a respectful distance. Their relationship had settled into something neither of them had words for. Not quite friendship, not employer-employee, something forged in blood and trust that defied easy labels. "I have something for you." He placed a folder on the counter. "The Brooklyn brownstone is fully furnished. I took the liberty of hiring a decorator. Your taste, not mine. And there's a college fund for Emily. Full ride to whatever university she wants." Ariana opened the folder. Photographs of a beautiful home. Exposed brick, hardwood floors, a garden in the back. A place that was entirely hers. "Lorenzo, you don't have to." "I know," he cut her off gently. "But I want to. You gave me my daughter back. Twice. There's no amount of money that repays that debt, but let me try." Ariana studied his face. 6 months ago, he'd been a man on the edge, hollowed out by betrayal, nearly broken by his own failure to protect his child. Now there was something steadier in his eyes. Not softness. Lorenzo would never be soft. But perhaps wisdom. The knowledge that power meant nothing if you had no one left to protect. "She's happy," Ariana said quietly. "That's all the payment I need." "I know, but take it anyway. For Emily, for yourself." Lorenzo's voice dropped lower. "You saved more than Francesca's life. You reminded me what I was fighting for in the first place." Before Ariana could respond, Francesca's voice rang out from upstairs. "Aunt Ariana, I forgot my lunch." They both smiled. "Duty calls," Ariana said. "Always does." That evening, the balcony. The sun set over New York in shades of orange and purple, the city sprawling endlessly below the Andrea estate like a kingdom of glass and steel. Ariana stood on the balcony outside her room, wrapped in a cardigan against the March chill. Francesca appeared beside her, already in pajamas, dragging her stuffed rabbit. Without a word, she climbed onto the bench and curled into Ariana's side. Emily joined them moments later, sitting on Ariana's other side, pulling out her phone but present in the way teenagers were, half here, half elsewhere, but grounded by proximity. "I love this," Francesca whispered. "All of us together." "Me too, Squirt," Emily said, not looking up from her screen. Ariana wrapped her arms around both girls, these pieces of her heart she'd fought so hard to protect, one by blood, one by choice, both irreplaceable. "Aunt Ariana?" Francesca looked up with those serious, dark eyes that sought too much for a 10-year-old. "You're not leaving, right? Even when I'm all grown up?" Ariana kissed the top of her head. "I'm staying as long as you need me, sweetheart. That's a promise." "I'll always need you. You're my family." "You're mine too, baby, both of you." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the horizon and the mansion's lights began to glow like stars. Below them, the estate's iron gates swung closed for the night. 12 feet of wrought iron and security cameras, a barrier between their small sanctuary and the dangerous world beyond. But up here, in this small circle of warmth and trust, none of that mattered. A janitor had walked into a mansion 6 months ago with nothing but a mop bucket and her grandmother's wisdom. She'd exposed a murderer, survived a Mafia war, and found a family in the last place she'd ever expected. Lorenzo watched from his office window 3 floors below, seeing the 3 figures silhouetted against the darkening sky. His daughter, his daughter's protector, his daughter's sister by choice, his family, redefined. He raised his whiskey glass in a silent toast to the woman who'd changed everything, not with power or money or violence, but with compassion, courage, and the simple truth that some things matter more than empires. The gates closed, the mansion settled into night, and Ariana Johnson, former janitor, current guardian, forever changed, held her family close and watched the stars come out over New York. She'd survived. They'd all survived. And that, she thought, was its own kind of miracle. Thank you for watching this story all the way to the end. If you enjoyed it, I know you'll love the next one. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story.